Well, hello everybody, how are you doing this fine day? I hope you're enjoying your week. Welcome back to another survival challenge. But hey, Rouga, why do you keep making all these survival challenges? Most people haven't seen that show, and they don't seem to get all that many views. What the fuck are you doing? Well, you know what? I like the survival challenges. I enjoy them. I find them interesting. They're fun. So stop being a goddamn killjoy, sit back, and just, be entertained. So a couple of updates before we start. For one, I'm currently playing through Space Marine 2. Give me a bit to actually complete it, but I am playing it. So I do eventually want to make some kind of crossover video between Helldivers 2 and Space Marine 2. I'm playing both of them currently, and there's a lot of similarities between the two games, so I'm not sure exactly what I'm gonna make right now. Maybe some kind of survival challenge, or maybe like a which is better type video where I compare Space Marine 2 to Helldivers 2 and see what games did what aspects of their game better, compare them, see which one's better. I used to make those, haven't made one in a while. I might make something like that. I don't know, still thinking about it. Something is compelling me to make something with these two together. Maybe I'll make like a what if buddy cop scenario sort of thing, where it's like what would happen if a Space Marine meets a Helldiver and then they both get trapped on a planet together and they have to like come to an agreement and sort of help each other get off the world. What exactly would that look like? How would their philosophies sort of clash and kind of align to, I don't know. It could be kind of interesting. I'm still fiddling with the idea. Secondly, I'm thinking about doing a week by week episode discussion on different shows that come out, where an episode will come out, I'll watch that episode, then I'll make a video discussing the episode with you guys, release it out, and we can sort of talk about it in the comments and shit. And I feel like I can do a video like that in a short enough time that it won't step on my current release schedule, and doing that video means that I won't have to replace other videos that I make, because I can make those videos in like an hour or two. Wouldn't take me all day to make that video. I was thinking about doing it with the Penguin series at first. I've already seen episode 1. It was really good. I was thinking about making a video discussing it and doing all that kind of stuff. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to do it or not. I'm just throwing ideas out there, okay? Now, if you don't know anything about Oz, you've never seen the show, you don't know what the fuck it is, go watch part 1. Part 1's going to be up in the corner. Click on it right now. You can see the start of that video. That'll explain to you what the whole Oz deal and what Oz is and some of the characters and all that kind of stuff, because otherwise you're gonna watch this and you might be kind of confused. This is part 3 of a series of Oz videos, but I'm wasting enough of your time. Let's get started. First up on the top block, we have Alex DeLarge from A Clockwork Orange. Fun fact, well, not so very fun, but Alex DeLarge actually doesn't have a last name in the book. His name's just Alex. The reason why they call him Alex DeLarge in the movie is because in the book there's a scene where he's raping a bitch and he says, "I'm Alex DeLarge," and someone decided to make that his name because whoever wrote this movie has a really sick sense of humor. So Alex is a high school student and gang leader of a group that he calls the Droogs, and he basically just goes around this gang and beats up people, murders people, breaks into people's houses, rapes women and little girls. They're just kind of assholes who just do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it, and really that's all I can kind of tell you about his character. As much as I like Stanley Kubrick and Stanley Kubrick movies generally speaking, he has a particular weakness when it comes to writing characters. See, Stanley Kubrick's movies are always about grander, larger ideas. A Clockwork Orange as a movie is not a character study of Alex himself, how he got this way, who he is as a person, what he's thinking while he's going through all the things that he's going through. That's not really the purpose of the movie. It's more so a look at the prison system and a philosophical idea of what were to happen if you were to take away this fundamental part of a criminal's life and try and force them into society where they don't really fit. That's the idea of the movie, and because of that, Alex as a character suffers, and I don't really understand why Alex does the things that he does. You're not really supposed to. And that makes putting Alex in this challenge a little more difficult than it otherwise would be, because I don't really 100% understand why he does the things he does or what he would do when you put him in different situations. He just sort of does it. He almost seems like a Joker-esque character who just does the things he likes to do because he's a sadistic dick. In the movie A Clockwork Orange, he's sent to prison for murdering some woman after breaking into her house. But theoretically, Alex can go to prison for any number of crimes, from murder to breaking and entering to rape to torture to all sorts of awful shit that he does to people. Like, you could basically make the entirety of A Clockwork Orange and just change Alex's name to Patrick Bateman, and I would totally believe that those are the same characters, and A Clockwork Orange is just a prequel to American Psycho. They're just pure, irredeemable evil without reason or cause for the evil that they do. So what exactly would happen if you take this sadistic dick and you throw him into Emerald City of of Oz Penitentiary. And I'm gonna be straight with you, it ain't gonna be good. And the reason for that is super simple. He has no real skills that would help him in a prison environment. For one, Alex is only a teenager. He's shown to be a relatively short, skinny, and twerpy guy. So right off the bat, he's gonna be completely overpowered by anyone he comes into contact with. Outside of that, he has no real skills when it comes to crime. Many of the people who are in Oz has tons of street smarts and are capable of dealing with drugs within the prison and other very complex criminal enterprises that make them valuable among the other prisons in the jail. All Alex does is attack people, rape people, and break into people's houses. He doesn't have any skills. He gives absolutely no value to anyone within the prison at all. But the main issue he's going to run into when he gets there is the fact that he really enjoys raping and hurting women. And this basically is going to be the nail in the coffin for him. As evil as the characters in Oz are, and many people in real life prisons, there is a general rule that is unanimous across all prisons everywhere, even in fiction. And that is, if you hurt women and children, you're fucked. And this is shown several times in Oz, particularly with a character by the name of Vern, who is the leader of the neo-Nazis in the prison of Oz. So at one point in the show, something very similar happens where these two teenage boys who have rich parents basically go and rape some girl in a park. They are then arrested and go to prison, and when they get there, Vern finds out what they did, and he goes around and tells all of the other gangs, everybody else in the prison, you don't touch those boys, they're mine. When they come in, he tricks them into joining under them, the neo-Nazis, for their own protection, and then he rapes them constantly for several months, forces them into committing several other crimes, including murder, then eventually kills them both. This is all because he finds out that they raped a woman in the outside. And this is Vern. This is the white supremacist neo-Nazi leader who is a mass murderer and prison rapist. And even he has issues with these boys. If you put Alex in this prison, basically you'd have the exact same thing happen. While I'll say that Alex is capable of fighting a little bit better than those boys are, as he's a part of a gang and he's shown getting into gang fights with other gangs and stuff, sure. But a couple of high school boys getting together and getting into street fights with other high school boys is absolutely nothing compared to the actual militia-trained Aryan Brotherhood who want to kill them. Alex isn't going to be able to do shit here, and he's going to be pretty much screwed from the moment he gets to prison solely because of the crimes that he's committed outside. So yeah, basically Alex is only going to survive as long as Vern wants him to. Next up on the list, we have Dwight Manfredi from Tulsa King. And a part of me was thinking that I shouldn't use this character until like season 2 is finished, because season 2 just started airing. So maybe I should wait till that season's done and then I can use Dwight in one of these. But then I thought, no, that shit's not gonna end for another 2.5 months. I'm not waiting for all that. Fuck it, we're doing it now. So Dwight was a capo for the New York Mafia throughout the 80s and 90s, and eventually in like the early 2000s, I think it was like 2004 or 2003 or some shit, some really bad shit happened involving the death of a guy and a building getting on fire. So he basically ended up taking the blame for it and going to jail because it was what was best for the family, and he ends up doing 20 years in prison. When he gets out of prison, he tries to go back to his family, and his family's like, you know, there's really not a whole lot here for you. We're gonna send you down to Tulsa in Oklahoma, and you're gonna sort of start your own little thing out there, and you'll send us money from whatever you make out in Tulsa. He was not happy about this at all. He viewed it as them basically just sending him out to pasture. But he did do it anyway, and he went out to Tulsa, and he started building a little criminal enterprise out there. And then a bunch of story details later that you'll have to watch the show to actually figure out, he ends up turning on the New York Mafia and becoming the boss of Tulsa, completely disconnected from anything going on in New York. Ergo, he became the Tulsa King. How well Dwight's going to do when he gets sent to Oz, which is a prison in New York, is entirely dependent on what version of Dwight we send there. If we send him there basically replacing the first time he went to prison, when that building got burnt down, all that shit happened back in 2004, he'll be okay because he's a member of the Italian Mafia, the New York Mafia, so he goes up there, he'll just join the New York mob in the prison, and he'll just sort of be fine. He'll stay there for 20 years, then he'll leave. No problem. However, that kind of completely eliminates all of the shit that happens in the entirety of season 1, all the character development he has. So I just feel like that would be dumb. If we use the version of him at the end of season 1 when he is arrested yet again and then is sent to Oz, now you have a far more interesting story, because now you have a version of Dwight who has betrayed the New York Mafia to make his own mafia in Tulsa, and he will go to Oz immediately having a shit ton of enemies with the New York Mafia who now want him dead for being a literal fucking traitor. So how will Dwight be able to do in Oz? Well, he'll do really, really fucking poorly. Look, I don't know how it's going going to go down. I assume when he gets arrested at the end of season 1, they're not going to send him to a New York prison. They're going to send him to a prison somewhere in Tulsa, at least for the start of that season. So I don't know if it's going to become an issue that he's going into prison with people who want to kill him. But in this scenario, that's exactly what would happen. And I just don't see a way that he could possibly survive. The only way he could possibly live is if he formed allies that would protect him from his own gang. And who is he going to form allies with? The Mexican gang? Probably not. The black gang? Definitely not. The neo-Nazis? I don't think Dwight would be okay with siding with the neo-Nazis. He'd probably die before that happens. He really doesn't have a whole lot of options here. Maybe he could somehow build a new gang inside the prison and make connections and things like this. Maybe he can make deals with certain people, like I give you something, Mexican gang, and you kind of help me survive the Italian gang. But it would have to be a really massive gift he gives to those other gangs to incentivize them into fighting against the entire Italian mafia who wants him dead. No, chances are he's going to be completely abandoned by everyone, and he's just going to be given up to the Italian mafia so they can do literally whatever they want to him. And this really sucks. I was hoping he would survive longer. I really like Dwight. Tulsa King's a good show. How often do you get a feel-good mob show? If you've never seen Tulsa King, that description is going to confuse the hell out of you. But if you have, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, man, it sucks to be Dwight, but he's dead. Next up, we have Derrick Vineyard from American History X. And for certain people who have little baby virgin ears, just be aware that I'm about to speak positively about characters who are neo-Nazis, skinheads, and racists. So if that's something you don't want to deal with, don't want to listen to, don't want to be involved in any way, shape, or form, you can skip to the next section of the video. You can mute it, you can stop being a little bitch. So Derrick was a relatively normal high school student who had a pretty damn racist dad. Not like super neo-Nazi racist, but your casual suburban household racism. Well, one day he was at work when he was murdered by a black man, and that sort of just set Derrick off on this wild belief system that everything that wasn't white was basically making the world a worse place. He ends up joining this group of neo-Nazis and rises through the ranks until he's basically like second in command of this massive army of neo-Nazis doing all sorts of crazy hate crimes. Eventually, at one point, he pisses off a bunch of black guys, and then later that night, they come to his house and try to steal his car. While he tries to stop them, they crash the car, which pisses him off because that car belonged to his dad, and he murders them by forcing him to bite down on a curb and then stomping on the back of his head as hard as he can. And look, I know this is a hate crime and all, and that's not cool, but that's a fucking cool kill. There is no denying that. Anyway, he ends up going to jail for a couple of years, and while he's in jail, he goes through a bunch of stuff and has all this character growth, and eventually he becomes a not neo-Nazi anymore. When he gets out of prison, he realized that his younger brother, who was too young to be a neo-Nazi when he went in, was now very heavily involved with the neo-Nazis, and he decides to try and basically get his brother out of that life to help him not turn out how he did. So you got half the movie where Derrick's a neo-Nazi and half the movie where he's not a neo-Nazi trying to save his brother from the life that he led. Overall, it's a really solid movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. So the thing about putting Derrick in Oz is we can only put him in Oz at one particular point. There's two versions of Eric in this movie. There's the neo-Nazi version and the version who is reformed and no longer a neo-Nazi. We can't put the reformed version in prison because that version's not a criminal. There would be no reason to put him into a prison. He doesn't do anything wrong at that point. He's reformed. So we have to put the version of Derrick that's a criminal, which is the neo-Nazi skinhead, race-hating, murdering, motherfucker, that guy, the original one. So what would happen if that version of Derrick went to Oz? Would he still see the light and become a good person like he did in the original movie? What would happen differently? And honestly, it's going to be a lot sadder than that. So if you haven't seen American History X, Derrick's change from being a bad dude to a good dude happens for a particular reason that I don't think will come up in Oz. You might look at it on the surface and say, well, he befriends that black guy and that sort of teaches him, but that's a part of it, sure. But the main reason he ends up turning against the whole neo-Nazi ways is because he starts to realize slowly but surely that every single person within that neo-Nazi group are all a bunch of lying, hypocritical, sadistic bastards who just do what they do to get ahead and don't really care about the same moral things that he cares about. They're essentially all posers using hate as a weapon for their own benefit, not actually because they truly believe in the cause they're standing for. This slowly opens Derrick's eyes to see that the cause that he was standing for is complete bullshit and was made up by a bunch of fucking grifters to take advantage of people. This is a big part of the storyline, and this is the part where I'm gonna start what do you fucking kids call it? Victim blaming? Yeah, I'm gonna do some of that shit. Derrick getting raped in American History X is totally his own fucking fault. And I'm not saying he got raped because he's in prison. He's only in prison because he's a neo-Nazi. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, when he gets to prison, he joins the neo-Nazis in the prison immediately. He is shown from the very beginning to be the most extreme neo-Nazi in the prison. Like, at one point, a neo-Nazi is shown trading with a Mexican guy in the prison, and all of the neo-Nazis are fine except for Derrick. He sees it as a betrayal of their belief system, and when he tells this to someone else, one of the other neo-Nazis says back to him that they're all getting sick and tired of his judgments and his fucking high and mighty shit that he's pulling. Like, chill the fuck out with the neo-Nazi bullshit. Even the other neo-Nazis think that he's too extreme for the neo-Nazis. So later in the movie, when he does befriend the black guy, and he no longer wants to be around the neo-Nazis because he's sort of starting to see through their bullshit, they take this particularly personally and they rape him. But here's the thing. He was the most extreme neo-Nazi who was so adamant on not even trading with other races, more so than any of them, but yet he goes off and becomes best friends with a black guy. I mean, of course the neo-Nazis are gonna view you as a traitor. You were the one saying they weren't good enough, and then you went off and did something totally, like, come on, man. I mean, through the eyes of a racist neo-Nazi piece of shit, obviously, Derrick did some fuck shit in this scenario. You don't tell someone to behave a certain way and adamantly accuse them of being not for it, and then you go and do, like, the most opposite thing you possibly can. Come on now. Anyway, to get to the point of this tangent, he just started seeing all of the neo-Nazis and the people in his group behaving in a way that went against how he believed they should behave. He ended up finding out that his boss, the guy who started the neo-Nazi group, who constantly claimed that he did his time and he went to prison for the cause and everything, he ends up finding out that the guy actually never went to prison, and he actually turned on the other people he was arrested with, and he let them go to prison, and he got out with like a slap on the wrist. And that went against Derrick's principles. And he just constantly saw that the neo-Nazis were just going against not only his principles, but the principles that they claim to stand on. So if Derrick went to Oz, would something similar like that happen? No, because Vern is far less hypocritical than the neo-Nazis that exist in the American History X story. Vern is a bad guy. Like, he's a super bad guy. He's a rapist, he's a murderer, he's a real piece of shit. But he also stands by his word and has very particular principles that he generally, throughout pretty much every season of the show, stands by. And in a lot of ways, the neo-Nazi version of Derrick will actually see Vern as a honorable person, as oddly as that sounds. I already talked about earlier in the video how Vern took it upon himself to punish the two teenagers because they raped a girl. By the way, he didn't know that girl they raped. He just knew that they raped a teenage girl, and that was enough to cause him to punish them. But this isn't the only time this happens in the story. Vern also crucifies a pedophile because the man is a pedophile. He crucifies him and kills him. Time and time again, Vern is shown to stand on his principles and hold other people to the principles by which he stands on. Unlike the neo-Nazis in the prison American History X, who were starting to deal with Mexicans and black people when it suited them, going against their belief system, Vern would never do that. I mean, at one point in Oz, one of the neo-Nazis, one of Vern's best friends and second in command, has to go get surgery. He needs new, like, gums, basically. His gums are infected. He has to get, like, the skin cut off and replaced with different gums. Well, he goes to the hospital to get it replaced, and the dentist purposefully gives him a black guy's gums, like, to mess with him because he's a neo-Nazi. And then when everyone finds out that he now has a black man's gums, Vern rejects him from the group and says, you're not one of us anymore because you're not a pure Aryan. He doesn't let this man back in until he takes a knife and literally slices the gums out of his mouth to allow himself to get back into the gang. And only then does Vern allow him back in. Now, again, you could say that this is super fucked up, and it is. Like, the whole philosophy is fucked. But you can't deny that the man stands by his fucked up principles. Always. I mean, he believes that the Aryan Brotherhood exists to build up their community and to essentially further the progress of the white race and white people as a whole. I mean, he's basically a white Malcolm X who murders and rapes more people. And this is where the story is going to get kind of sad. Because Vern sticks by his principles and because Vern is not a hypocrite, like pretty much every neo-Nazi in American History X, Derrick's not going to see the flaws in the philosophy like he would have otherwise because they share a lot of the same principles. If Derrick got arrested and went to prison as a neo-Nazi like he was at the beginning of American History X and meets Vern, he will actually look up to and respect Vern. Vern would actually utterly despise Derrick's boss because Derrick's boss turned on his people to get out of prison. Vern would likely kill Derrick's boss when he found that out. He would see him as someone not worthy to be in the Aryan Brotherhood. American History X is a story about an honorable man who misguidedly joins the Aryan Brotherhood and then starts to realize that he's the only person there with any honor, and his mind starts to get changed as he loses faith in the philosophy. But if he were to go on and meet other members of the Aryan Brotherhood who were just as honorable as him, he would have never seen the holes in the philosophy. So how will Derrick Vineyard do if he went to Oz? He'd do really well. He'd be accepted with open arms into the Aryan Brotherhood. He'd get along very well with most of its members, including Vern. There's probably certain things he wouldn't like he probably wouldn't like the idea that they rape people, but it is prison, and I mean, to be honest, at no point does Vern rape a not white person, so he even kind of stands by his principles in that way. And because by their logic, he's not running into a corrupted version of the Aryan beliefs, and he's actually running into like the legitimate Aryan beliefs, he's not going to lose faith in it. He's just going to be a member of the Aryan race, and when he gets out, he'll probably be even stronger in his belief system and likely even overthrow his own boss, who because of Vern's influence will have found to be unworthy of his position as well. Derrick would be a very different person at the end of American History X if he went to Oz Penitentiary as opposed to whatever prison he ended up going in that movie. He would be a far darker and more evil character and far more loyal to the cause than he ever was before. Last up, but certainly not least, we have Boyka from the Undisputed series. And let's just get this one over with. I mean, Oz is fucked here. Originally, Boyka was introduced very early on in the series as the villain. He was this absolute monster Russian martial arts master who was just in this prison for some reason. And in the prison, they just had like a fight club where people would just constantly get thrown together and have to fight each other. And they would take fantastic fighters from other prisons and transfer them into this prison to fight some more. And Boyka was just the best of the best. Just nobody could beat Boyka. As he and many others will call him throughout the series, he is the most complete fighter in the world. He was constantly obsessed with getting stronger and better and fighting the best people. He just fought for the love of fighting and really no other reason. There was a bunch of other stuff with his Catholicism and things like that, like he was fighting for God and shit like this. There was more to it, but basically if you narrow it down, he's like Goku. He's like an evil Goku. He just really likes fighting. Well, people like this character so much that in future films, he just became the main character, and it's gotten to the point now where like the last 3 or 4 movies have only been about him. The main protagonist from the original couple movies hasn't even been in it since like Undisputed 2, maybe? It's completely about Boyka now. And Boyka's gone through a lot of character development to the point that now he's not really a bad guy. He actually feels really bad for a lot of the shit that he did earlier on in the series, and he's trying to make amends for him. And much of this is due to his Catholic beliefs and his beliefs about God in general. But unlike Derrick, who's a bad person who becomes a good person, Boyka is still wanted, like all the way up to the end of the series. I mean, the last movie that released, it literally ends with him getting arrested again. So he's still a criminal. So I can use the good version of Boyka and just, you know, chuck him in Oz and see how he does. So how does he do? He fucking dominates. Is this even a question? Boyka is literally the most complete fighter in the world in his series, and his series is a goddamn martial arts fighting movie. Fighting is his whole thing. Awesomely choreographed fight scenes. He fights people 3 times his size. He fights 4 or 5 people. He fights people who have guns. He takes them all on. At one point, he gets shot in the stomach and still fights like 3 or 4 more people and takes them out with a fucking bullet in his stomach. Well, I'm not going to go as far as to say that Boyka is a superhuman character. He's still vastly stronger, more skilled, faster than pretty much anybody that exists in Oz, which is kind of filmed and made almost in a sort of realistic documentary type style. Like, you're supposed to believe that Oz is a real place and these are real people. The Undisputed movies, by comparison, are okay with Boyka not always being entirely human with the insane shit that he's capable of doing. Honestly, when Boyka goes to Oz, I don't even really see why anybody would want to fuck with him. Like, he doesn't have connections to any of those groups. He doesn't have a connection with the black gang, the Italian gang, the Mexican gang, the neo-Nazis. None of them are really relevant to him. I mean, he's a fucking Russian guy. And if he does get into any problems with anybody, that shit will be dealt with immediately. There is nothing in Oz prison that can defeat Boyka in a fight. The absolute strongest, most skilled fighter in all of Oz is probably Adebisi. He's a beast. He's fearless. He's ferocious. He's a big, muscly dude. He ain't fucking Boyka. That's just 2 completely different levels of skill. Honestly, the only thing that even can happen if you send Boyka to Oz, like negative-wise, is he's gonna lose his fucking mind. The thing is that Boyka has to be fighting. Like, he needs it. It's like almost an obsession. Even the good good version just has to be fighting all the time. In the prison that he's at in his own series, he constantly gets to fight other prisoners. They literally have a ring where they throw the prisoners in and they get to fight. And he fights against some of the best prisoners in the world. This keeps him busy and happy. Oz doesn't really have that. At one point in the show, they do try having like a boxing competition between all the prisoners, and that's pretty cool, but it only happens once, and a lot of the fights end up being rigged because Ryan O'Reilly uses that as an excuse to make a bunch of money, which also would greatly piss off Boyka if he ever found out that that was the case. But yeah, Boyka would join that boxing match and he would absolutely dominate, and if he ever found out that he was being drugged or someone else was being drugged in order to rig the match, he would fucking destroy the person who did that shit. Ryan would be screwed. He better hope Boyka never finds out. But honestly, even that boxing match is not going to keep him sated. He's going to be so bored. There isn't going to be anybody in the prison who's capable of matching his fighting ability. And because of that, he's going to start slowly losing his mind, and he's going to have to escape prison. See, the final Undisputed movie that came out, the last one, they might have another one at some point. I don't know why I'm calling it final, but the last one that came out, when he goes to prison, it's almost like a happy ending. Like he's going back to a place where he belongs. It doesn't end on a sad note where he's like going into prison in cuffs. It's like, oh, it's so depressing. No, it ends with him entering the ring of the prison, getting ready for his next fight, and raising his arms up in victory as everyone cheers and his next opponent enters the ring. Like, this is what he wants. This is where he's most comfortable, and that doesn't really happen in Oz. I kind of feel like Boyka will be obsessed with escaping since he can't get what he needs to thrive in this particular prison. Will he succeed at escaping? I don't know. Maybe. That's up in the air. But I'll tell you one thing, no matter what, he's surviving. Whether he can escape or not escape, he's not going to be dead. Nobody here can actually kill him. I mean, maybe they'll poison his food or something, but again, I don't really know why they would even have an issue with him. He's just a dude who likes to be left alone and likes to fight a lot. Like, why would you go out of your way to make problems with that person? Just seems dumb. But that's all we got for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, and join the membership. Remember, if you join the membership, you get videos early. And I know I haven't said this in a while, but we do have a Discord. So, you know, join the Discord if you're interested. It's got a little under 800 members right now, and it's usually popping off quite a bit. So, you know, check it out if you're interested. And always remember, y'all stay safe out there, you hear?